Hey everybody, this is Ben and welcome back to my Leetcode series. And today we're going to be looking at Leetcode problem 451 titled Sort Characters by Frequency. So we'll read the prompt, we'll talk about some pseudocode, we'll look at an example, and then we'll code up a solution. So given the string s, sort it in decreasing order based on the frequency of the characters. The frequency of a character is the number of times it appears in the string. Return the sorted string. If there are multiple answers, you can return any of them. So notice, like in this first example here, since R appears once and T only appears once, we can technically return those in any order. So any characters of the same frequency we can return in any order. So that is important as we move into the pseudocode. So we simply need to sort the characters of the given string in decreasing order. Note, decreasing order means that values can be the same. So like this array here, for example, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1 is an array in decreasing order. Also, letters of the same frequency may be added to our result string in any order. This makes the problem much more manageable. We can return any of the possible strings that meet the criteria. So what data structure can be used to keep track of frequency easily? A hash map would be the typical answer. However, in this problem, we need to sort the frequencies quickly. So I suggest using a 2D array and sorting it by row head values, which will be our frequencies. So getting into the pseudocode here, we'll create a string builder object to create our result string. We'll create a string that contains all the possible characters in the prompt. And I titled this alpha in our code solution. I think in this notepad document, I titled all characters. So it's going to be all lowercase characters, all uppercase characters, and all digits 0 through 9 as specified in the prompt. We will use this to store the index of the characters in our string. Create a 2D array of size all characters.length, so that's what I'm referring to here, and 2, because we're going to store the frequency first and then the index second. So each entry in this 2D array will look like 0 by 0 by default. We'll fill the first value with the character's frequency. The second value will be the index of the character in our all characters string. For example, in the given string EERT, E's entry would look like 2 and 4, with 2 being the frequency and 4 being the index of E in our all characters string. As you can see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. We'll have a for loop through each character in our given string. We'll create a temporary integer variable, that is equal to all characters.index of our current character. So 2D array, our first entry at t0, we're going to increment by 1 because that's going to keep track of our frequency for the current character. In our 2D array of the second entry, t1, we're just going to set equal to t, so we'll store that index. This is needed post sort because we're going to sort this index by frequency, this array by frequency, and we'll need this index later on, which is our t variable. So notice we made a very large array. So for each character in our all characters string, it's going to have its own entry. So most of these, especially with smaller strings, we won't touch at all. They'll end up as 0 after we sort. The ones that have a frequency of 0 and an index of 0, we can just ignore. So keep that in mind. And then we end our for loop. Now we sort through our 2D array by row head value. We will sort highest to lowest in this case. And then we use a for loop and we say if our 2D array entry at I equals 0, we break. Because once we hit a 0, which represents frequency, we know that we have added all characters from the given string into our result string. Thus, we can break the for loop and return our answer. Now, if this if statement doesn't catch, we'll create an int t equal to 2D array I0, which is our frequency, a while loop for t that does not equal 0, so we're adding the character of the frequency times to our result. We'll append the character to our result string, we'll subtract 1 from t, and then we end our while loop, and then we end our for loop. So return our result string, and that's the pseudocode. So let's go ahead and walk through an example here. So our given string s is EERT. Create our string builder object SB, create our string alpha, which has all our possible characters in this problem. We create our 2D array with dimensions of alpha.length and 2. So each character here has its own entry in our 2D array matrix. Then we use our for loop. Now when I equals 0, our current character is e, so our int t equals the index of e in our alpha string, which is 4. So we set our 2D array entry 40, we'll increment that by 1, so counting the frequency of e. And then for 1, we'll just store 1. We need to store that index for the post sort. When I equals 1, our character again is e, so same thing, we get 4. 40, we increment, so now our frequency is 2, as you can see for this entry. And we'll just repeat what we did in storing the index. Now for I equals 2, character is r. The index of r in our alpha string is 17. So we'll say matrix 17, 0, we increment that by 1, so now it equals 1. And then 17, 1 equals 17, we'll store our index. I equals 3, we get t, index 19, 19, 0, we increment, so it equals 1. 19, 1, we store the index just of 19, and we end our for loop. So now we're going to sort the matrix highest to lowest row header value. This can be done in one command, which I'll show you when we walk through our code. So our matrix now looks like this. Keep in mind there's a ton of more 0, 0 entries, but we only have 3 entries with above 0 values. So when we sort, we'll get, remember, frequency is our first value, index is our second. So this represents 2 e's, represents, what was second? We have 1 r and 1 t. So now we're just going to iterate through our 2D array. We'll pull these values and we'll print the character frequency times, and then we'll move on. So for I equals 0, we'll say matrix 0, 0 equals 2. Or, well, that is what it equals. We're not setting it to that value. Matrix 0, 1 equals 4. So does matrix 0, 0 equal 0? No. So we'll go ahead and move on to our operation. We'll set t equal to matrix 0, 0, which is 2. That's our frequency. While t does not equal 0, we append the character that's at matrix 0, 1, which represents e, because remember that's our index. And then we'll decrement t. So this is going to add e to our final string twice. And the while loop, and then our final string, our string builder, currently looks like EE. Now for I equals 1, same process. Our values here, matrix 1, 0 is 1, that's our frequency. Matrix 1, 1 is 17, that's our index. Our if statement is not going to catch. We'll set t equal to 1. While t does not equal 0, we append the character, which is, in this case, that's going to be r. And then we'll decrement t. And our while loop, and as you can see, our string now equals EER. For I equals 2, it's the same exact process. Here's our values for I index 2. So we have a frequency of 1, an index of 19. Does matrix 2, 0 equal 0? No. So we'll move on. Int t equals matrix 2, 0, which equals 1. While t is not equal 0, append our character, decrement t, and our while loop. SB now equals EERT. So now when we get to I equals 3, we're out of entries. As you can see, our frequency equals 0 and our index equals 0. The frequency is really what matters here. So does our frequency equal 0? Matrix 3, 0. And that's a yes, so we go ahead and break. Since the array is sorted by row header greatest to least, once we hit a 0, the rest of the row heads are 0, meaning we have input all our characters frequency times. That means we're done inputting characters. And we go ahead and end our for loop here. Now we'll return SB to string, which just equals EERT. Let's go ahead and talk about a solution here. I'm going to go and just cut this out. We'll retype it together. So first we have our string builder object equals new string builder. And make sure you import this right here so we have access to our string builder. Now we'll say string alpha, I'm going to copy paste this one, is all our possible digits specified in the prompt. Now we'll create our 2D array named matrix, or mat for short, new int, alpha.length, and 2. We'll use our first for loop, int I equals 0, I less than s.length, because we're going to scan through every character. Just for speed purposes, we'll say t equals alpha.index of s.character at I. we'll set matrix T0 equal to, or we'll just increment that, sorry. Increment it by 1. Matrix T1 equals T, storing our index. So right here, counting our frequency, storing our index as we talked about previously. So we can be done with that. And now through this command, and this is just something, when I first used this, I was able to pick it up just off Stack Overflow. So Google can always help you find commands for what you're trying to do. This is going to sort a 2D array by row head, greatest to least, which is very important for this problem. So say for int I equals 0, I less than matrix length I plus plus. Now we'll say if matrix I 0 equals 0, that's when we know to break. That's when we know the problem's over. If not, we'll set a temporary variable to matrix I 0. We'll use this in our while loop, while t does not equal 0. We'll say sb.append alpha.character at mat I and 1. We'll say t minus minus. So that's going to add our characters to our final string builder or string result. And then after that, we can just return our string. String builder as a string. We have to convert it back because it is a different object. Let's go ahead and run the code. And as you can see, that worked. We'll go ahead and submit it as well. It does tend to run slower while I'm recording, but this should get you around 15 milliseconds, which I believe is about 90% faster than other solutions. Now, I know this problem did suggest using a hash map, so this is definitely a different approach. I do think it's much faster, it saves space. So just keep in mind, 2D arrays can be very powerful in some context, especially when you're sorting them. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something, and have a great day.